Peace. Islam. Yeah, technical difficulties, but we back. You know what I'm saying? We're just gonna wrap this up. Coming live from Sylacauga, deep in Alabama country. You know what I'm saying? So we were talking about how the Shawnee is, again. We talked about on this marker how the refugee Shawnee, so-called refugee Shawnee, set this town up in 1748. So we're just gonna go through what happened with that, and then we're gonna shut it down. So, okay. So we said Neocane and Peter Cartier, in 1745. Now it talks about these was some Shawnee, one Shawnee sheik, and Peter Cartier. He was like a league dude in the Shawnee, but he was a mixed Shawnee and French, so-called French heritage. But you know that's just straight nigga. Because again you can look at French Louisiana, so-called French Louisiana, and you see it ain't nothing but some niggas down there. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, and Cajun people and all of that. Those are the old French. It's always been that way in America, per se. So it said, okay, at that time, 1745, so Cartier was an influential trader in the Allegheny. So he's kind of leading this story about how they set up Sylacauga. So Cartier in 1745 was annoyed at the Pennsylvania colony for their failure to control the rum trade in so-called Shawnee communities. Now Shawnee, again, that's probably not the original name, but we're just gonna go with the English name. But the Shawnee, that's just an old territory, a so-called Barbary state up in Ohio country, Pennsylvania country, that area, you know what I'm saying? So he was annoyed with the rum trade because, he said that, the so-called, the British merchants or whatever, these people were kind of turning corporate, so they was just trying to get money. Plus, again, at the core of it all, because even though we had an alliance with the so-called British and all that, at the core of it all, these people was trying to get money. And, they were kind of going corporate because they was getting so much money. And that was kind of really what destroyed our European family, because they got so greedy and so relying on all that cheap labor from all their peasants and all that. It just became a machine. And that machine was able to be taken over by way less noble entities. And eventually they destroyed themselves and they got destroyed as nobility. And now the whole of Europe is a bunch of federal republics and democracies and communist states and all that, just like so-called the United States. Even though the United States ain't all the way communist, but at this point it's real close, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, and us aligning with that, we kind of got brought down with them with their nonsense, you know what I'm saying? So, but anyway, so he got annoyed, so he took about 500 Shawnee and left that area because, again, he saw them just getting drunk and adopting European culture and just getting off their square as far as being Muslims and all that stuff. So they went to the principal town of the Shawnees on Ohio called Neoconish Town, or it's called Cartier's Town. You know what I'm saying? They moved about 400 Shawnee, just kind of getting away from the nonsense of the influence of the so-called British. You know what I'm saying? So it said Cartier led 400 Shawnees to Lower Shawnee Town. They remained there until about June. They remained there till about that June of 1745, around that time. 1747. And then they went on to they moved to Eastern Kentucky. So our people just used to move around and just set up shop wherever we went. You know what I'm saying? We just roll deep like that. You know what I'm saying? But they moved to, and again, we talked about how certain sheiks could have followers, and followers would just go with them damn near wherever they went. You know what I'm saying? That's just how we used to just move around like that. You know what I'm saying? It's our land, so we just moved around. So he said they were there until June when they went to current Kentucky, and they founded the community of Escapatiki, you know what I'm saying? Escapatiki in Kentucky. And they said in 1747 the band dispersed to Tennessee, Alabama, and South Carolina. So they went down, you know what I'm saying? They went down south, and one of the bands came here and set up this town right here. It was already Miccosukee Creek, Alabama territory, but we would give our family members, our northern homies and family bloods, we would just let them set their situations up when they came down, you know what I'm saying? So they set their little situation up, and they founded this town. So these is Muslims, they founded this town from Ohio, or you know what I mean? So now, interestingly enough, it said that a band, even though most of the Shawnee that left, they stayed down south, because the South has always been a real spot. The people always maintain their customs and the mentality and the culture in the South. When it get hot up north and people want to be on that nonsense, our people will always go back down south. It's always been that way. So that's exactly what happened in this situation. It was like, man, these northern niggas, these northern clowns is losing their way like they always tend to do at some time, and we just go back down south. You know what I'm saying? It's always been that way. So these brothers and sisters came back down south, and they set this town up. You know what I'm saying? Back in 1747. You feel me? But it said a few of them went back up north. You know what I mean? And a couple of sheiks went back up north. They said Peter Cartier, he didn't go back up north, and he kind of got down with the French, so-called French down here, which is our again, in these territories. Up to the time of the so-called French and Indian War, you had some of the Muslims that was allied with the noble families of so-called Britain, and some of us allied with the so-called noble families of Europe, of so-called France. You know what I'm saying? So over there in Europe, so we kind of separated ourselves based on our alliances, our military alliances, who was getting bread with them. Niggas would switch it up. You know what I'm saying? But because they were all paying us. You know what I'm saying? They were all coming over here asking for protection and paying us. All the noble European families. So they was coming over here paying us for protection, asking us to get involved in their conflicts. And that ultimately destabilized us as well, getting involved in their nonsense. But that's how it was. You know what I'm saying? Niggas kind of separated themselves based on what other noble European families they was aligned with. You know what I'm saying? So, they went back up north. About 50 of them went back up north, and they asked the so-called British colonists in the Iroquois Six Nation. And we're going to do a drop about the Iroquois Six Nation, the old Moorish Mafia of New England. We're going to talk about them because that's real science that really need to be dropped about how the Iroquois essentially became the United States. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, they said that they went back up north, about 50 of them, and they asked to rejoin the British alliance and the Six Nation. And the Six Nation, the British actually accepted them back in, but they kind of chastised one of the main sheiks who left with Peter Cartier to go south, because Peter Cartier came south and kind of aligned with the French, so-called French. So when they went back up there, they was like, well, this is what they said. They said the so-called British authorities, who was aligned with the so-called Iroquois Six Nation, who was down with the British. So that was kind of the blood gang, you know what I'm saying? They accepted them back in, but they said they said basically they wanted to chastise and humiliate the chiefs, the sheiks that should have known better, that went down there and followed them down south and got down with the so-called French. So just check this out. So when they went back up north about 1748, let me see, let me get it together. Let me read what the Iroquois and the Six Nation, who was they the mafia bosses up north. You know what I'm saying? And the British and the British was paying them tribute, basically, essentially, for they helping their protection. And that was the old Moorish Moslem Mafia up north, the Iroquois. We're gonna go in on them. But it said that they sent the wampum belt, which is the old, that's just the old part of the old culture. They sent the wampum belt to one of the sheiks, Neakani, who went back up north with another couple of other sheiks, about 50 Shawnees. And this is what they said. They said, take this string of wampum, therewith chastise Neakani and his party in such terms as be a proper severity with them. Then tell the delinquent Shawnees that we will forget that this past and expect a more punctual regard in their engagements. Now what that sound like? So them sheiks went back up, and this is just between our people. This ain't got nothing to do with no Europeans like that. Because again, even the Europeans that was not speaking this new English, the European nobles, they were speaking Latin and they were speaking our languages with us. There was the dummies, the peasants that came up when in the American Revolution was speaking that new English, which is for slowed down industrialist type of people. But check it out. So they said to chastise the sheiks that came back up. Now don't that sound like in gang, don't that sound like he had to get DP'd, he had to get disciplined, or he had to get a pumpkin head or something like that? They had to probably beat him down, you know what I'm saying? And they let him back in, but they said, they had to humiliate him for selling out and going to the other gang, you know what I'm saying? So again, I say that to say, so these two sheiks got DP'd by the Iroquois when they went back up north for coming down south and getting down with the French alliance down south, you know what I'm saying? With the Muslims down south. So they got DP'd by going back up north, essentially. You already know they got their asses beat, you know what I'm saying? So all I'll say that to say is the gang culture and all that stuff that we have going on now, the thuggy and all of that stuff, that it's reduced to like a kindergarten state of what it used to be. I want y'all to imagine this so-called gang culture, the gangster, the gang banging, whatever culture they want to call it, the Moorish culture. I want y'all to imagine that widespread over the territory, over the so-called United States. And our people had towns, villages, in the woods. We was patrolling the whole terrain, but we was gang. I want y'all to imagine that. That's exactly how the old culture used to be. So when you hear about people getting DP'd and whatever and getting disciplined and so-called gang culture as it is now, that's nothing new. You know what I'm saying? They've always operated like, even the Europeans, our European noble family operate, it was always gang, family against family. You know what I'm saying? Noble against noble. That's how we used to roll. Now it's just the industrialists took it over, and now it's this fake industrial nation against industrial nation. That's their version of what we used to do. So I just wanted to just drive that home. But anyway, tapping in live from Alabama country, Sylacauga. the great Moorish marble city, you know what I'm saying? Yo, Moors was getting that marble money while you goofies is up here worrying about running up and down the street, hustling and all that. Nigga, your ancestors were getting marble money. Renationalize, get back in your culture. But anyway, Sylacauga, Alabama, you're tapping in live from Arabia. I'll tap back in with y'all later. Peace.